Hello, everybody. Welcome again to our second Insight series. Today, we have Carol Helsel, our host, and we have Paige Dunn, our executive consultant and sales strategist. Paige has many years of expertise in the hospitality field, leading sales and marketing teams. Both Carol and Paige had worked together at Kimpton Hotels after 9/11 and had experience of opening hotels in October and December of 2001. So I will kick this over to our host and our star interview today.
Hi, Nicole. Thank you. Hope you're doing well. We were having some technical difficulties earlier, so I just want to be sure, Nicole, that you can see me and see Paige and hear us.
I can hear you. Paige, I think you might be on mute still.
Yep, I see that. Well, I will just welcome everyone, and hopefully Paige can get on with us here shortly. So we are really excited to welcome all of you today, and really look forward to spending this next time. And I'm hearing that people can't see Paige or hear her. So Paige, that's where we were having some technical difficulties earlier. Technology, her computer crashed right before this, guys. So we're trying to get her back on, and we've been working on that for the past few minutes. So I apologize. Went flawlessly in rehearsal yesterday.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, Paige, and I can see you.
Okay,
so,
great.
Awesome. So welcome, Paige. We're so excited to have you here, and I am very, very thankful to have known you for longer than we want to admit. And at Dragonfly, as I always like to say, we're human first. So my first question to you is, how are you? How's your family? How have things been in walking through this in Washington, D.C.? We can't hear you again.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can. Awesome.
You can hear me now.
There we go.
Okay.
We can.
Sorry about that, everybody. I apologize for the technical difficulties. So everybody in my family is fine. Thank you for asking. And it has been quite a time, hasn't it? What our friends and colleagues are going through is really unbelievable, like nothing we've ever seen, as everybody says. But all's well in my world. Thank you. I just want to help everybody else get going again, get relaunched, get restarted.
Yeah, that's so important. You and I actually worked together in the immediate aftermath of 9/11. We met in 2001, right?
Right.
And, I remember the challenges that faced us in the immediate aftermath of that, opening a couple of hotels in DC right after. And so we're going to talk a bit to that later. But, I was on another webinar with STR and TravelZoo yesterday, and they were showing little tiny black swans for 9/11 and a tiny one for 2008, and this huge one, like, a gaggle of swans for this one, because it is a much larger event than any of us had anticipated. And, last year I was at the HSMAI Rock Conference and the Star Data Conference, and both had economists talking about, well, this is our forecast unless there's a black swan event. And nobody saw this coming in our industry. I mean, I think everyone knew that something like this was possible. Scientists had talked about it, but we just never really saw it coming and halting everything, because, we've dealt with some of the sickness type things before, and it's never resulted in this level of destruction. So, we're going to talk today about how sales can navigate a new frontier, because this is going to be very different from the past, and it has direct impact on how we service guests, how we take care of our groups, our business travelers, our travel managers, negotiations. There's so many different facets. So I'm going to get going with the first question. So what type of business do you think is going to be the first to come back?
So I think that we've probably all been on a lot of webinars and reading a lot of articles, and it's almost become sort of overload. But what I believe everybody thinks is that first we're going to be seeing the leisure market return. Chances are these are people that have been employed, they've been cooped up in their house working from home. There's something called revenge travel, which started as a term in China, out of China. And I think that's very true. I think there are going to be quite a few people who just want to hit the road, get out of the house as soon as things start to open up. And so that's probably going to be families or couples and looking for drive destinations. After that, then I think that we'll see the business transient market begin to come back, and we really have to keep our eye on this because the big corporations have their travel bans. When will they lift those? Hopefully by the end of the summer. We don't quite know yet, but certainly, again, the drive-to market will come back first. So your local negotiated accounts, for example, and those that may not have to fly. I think flying is the one thing that maybe gives people the greatest, the creeps in the airport. Yeah. So that's next. And then we'll be looking at groups. And what type of groups? Well, small meetings, right? And probably the drive-to market here again, your regional, your local accounts. And I think a lot of cities, their main feeder market comes from within their own city or that environment right around. So you probably already have quite a few contacts and clients right there in that neighborhood, and they're probably the ones that are going to be most likely to come back, and they're going to want to drive in, and they're they're going to find that to be the safest. Small groups, small meetings, and then I think that social will start gradually coming back again on a smaller scale. You're not going to have these giant weddings where people are flying in internationally or across the country. So it'll be more of a regional kind of a thing and smaller weddings, but at least it won't be people getting married and driving, having their wedding attendees driving down the street, cheering them on from a car. At least a smaller wedding's better than no wedding. So
no wedding, right? Yeah.
We've seen so much creativity out there in managing this. And so I think that's coming back. And then of course, the large meetings and the big citywide conventions, I think are going to take some time.
Take some time. Yeah, I just saw someone asked, how do you envision social returning?
I mean, I think that we are seeing wedding leads coming in. They maybe have had to move from the spring. We're seeing them moving towards the fall or maybe next year. And I think that I have a niece, in fact, that's getting married, and she's just really had to change everything that she was planning to do. She was planning to get married in August. That switched. Now it's November. Now it's going to be just a really intimate family wedding where people can drive to it. And the big party they were going to have in one state and the big wedding in another, they're rearranging that. So I just think that people are going to want to be together. I mean, we want to be with our families. We found a way to be with our families on Zoom. And so I think we've all learned a lot of technology related to that, even though I was late in signing in. But
that wasn't your fault.
Right. So I think social can come back, but it is going to take some time. Yeah, but people are going to want to get together. And then we have to really be thinking about how we set that up. And we'll talk more about that a little bit later.
Yeah, sure. And I do see a couple of questions, and I'm going to go with those just quickly. They asked, what about sports, and how small does small mean?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that it really depends. For the social, it depends on where your audience is. If you're having a local charitable event that's primarily local people that are philanthropists, you could have a big event. You could definitely have a big event as long as you find space that can accommodate the social distancing, which really is physical distancing, let's face it. So that sort of a thing. With a wedding, it depends on who's willing to fly if people have to fly in. So those things will have to be taken into consideration. With sports, we've yet to see any kind of movement, I think, on having people in the stadiums. However, it looks like the NFL has already sent out their RFPs. So teams are probably going to be coming back. It's a whole new world, right?
Yeah. So I'm going to go through a few more of our questions, Paige, and then we'll get back to some of the questions. We've got quite a few coming in, which is awesome. So what do you think the most important actions are that salespeople need to be taking right now for recovery?
So I will say that my heart aches for a lot of salespeople because they are not, many of them are furloughed. So for those that are fortunate enough to be working, and we saw on Facebook last night, there was somebody that had been able to keep his whole team working, which is fantastic. And
amazing,
go.
Right? Yeah.
We need the salespeople working. They are our future. So it's kind of like bring back sales.
Absolutely. I agree, Paige. It's like
right.
It's the lifeblood, and you're laying off your lifeblood. I'm just like, we've got to have people selling. There are hotels that aren't even answering their phones in sales, and poor salespeople are working the front desk and trying to get back to people in the evening, and the ones that, the one that's left, right? So yeah, it's crazy, huh?
Exactly. It is crazy, and it's skeletal staff, and DOSMs are having to do everything themselves. But if you are a sales manager that's working, that's the first thing, and the directors too. Answer the phone, get back to the clients. It may be a cancellation, and how painful this has been for our business. This is not why we got into sales, was to take a bunch of cancellations. So that's been a learning experience too for all of us. But responding to the clients first and foremost is the most important thing. And then begin your research. If we know that the drive market is where the business is going to come from, then that's what you need to focus on. And you have the tools, hopefully, to look at the Nolan reports for groups and look and see what groups within a couple hour distance you can tackle. Last week, Elise talked to us about maybe state associations. Fine, but there are many local accounts that you have probably that can meet locally, that can drive to your hotel to meet. I think that the tools, you can look into CVent and see who has looked at you in the past. You can look at your own reporting systems of where your business is coming from and really dig in there and be smart about it and be tactical about it. The cross-country meeting planner may not be, they may be the person you want to talk about next year. And then and we'll talk about that some more, what you need to be prepared for with that.
And what do sales calls look like right now and in the future when we're so used to having some sort of face-to-face interaction? I mean, I know a lot has moved with email, but we are, as people who love people, we like to meet and host and entertain and do sites and all that kind of stuff. How does that look in the future? How's that going to change?
Well, we have to get very creative, and we are a creative industry, and we've been through a lot, we've seen a lot, and we together are stronger, and we can be creative, right? I mean, many hotels have a meeting planner that cannot fly in to do a site inspection, so maybe you're doing a video of the whole team at the hotel, showcasing it that way. That's going to be kind of a standard thing. You're going to want to be able to really showcase your hotel when you can't do it in person. And sales calls, first of all, you want to be sure you're staying really close to your clients and making sure they're okay. It doesn't have to be a solicitation call. It's just a how are you doing? How are you surviving? What do things look like for you? Get them to help you with what they're seeing and what their clients, if they're a meeting planner, are saying. Or as a travel manager, what are their corporations saying when things are going to get back? The more you can get from the individual clients, the better. And then I think for solicitations, more of a cold call, it might be an email, and we just have to be thoughtful and genuine about how we approach that. Nobody wants to get a big, long email of feature dumping everything you have in your hotel and how everything's going to be spotless and exactly every way you're going to do that, or a big, heavy PDF that they have to open and deal with. They're just going to delete that. It needs to be short, simple, thoughtful, authentic, and if possible, clever, and maybe, some hope there. And maybe it's something about what's happening in your destination. Did you know that we reopened this? All the travel managers and planners are needing to know what is happening in your community. So you want to be very ready to speak to that for the calls coming in, but also that's a great thing to talk about. That just gives you a little hook to open the door. You've been to my city before, well, now this is what's happening here, and we'd love to see you come back. And we can curate your event so that you're safe, and we have partners outside for outside events, that sort of thing. I think relationships,
Go ahead.
I think that client relationships are more important than ever. And building new ones is going to be a little bit harder, but I think those that are thoughtful about it can definitely do it.
Okay, great. What about corporate rate season, BT, negotiated rate season? You know, we're hearing some things out of GBTA and some of the big brands about that. What are you hearing about this next season?
I think there's a lot of talk going on. I don't know that every decision has been made. In fact, I know decisions have not all been made yet, but many of you follow GBTA, and on their website, they've got the interview I say because everybody was talking about it, with Arnie Sorensen from Marriott. And in that interview, they talk about GBTA sort of supporting the suppliers in trying to delay RFP season. Our BT managers may not be working right now. We don't have the team on board to basically talk through what negotiations should look like. We don't know what next year is going to look like. Maybe get us some time to get more information and maybe kick off RFP season in December with negotiations happening in the first quarter when we have a little bit more historical information. That being said, there are going to be clients that want to negotiate now, and we've got to be prepared to do that. And we need to think about it. I mean, maybe you're going to extend your 2020 rates into 2021. Maybe that won't be enough. It sort of remains to be seen. I do think that a lot of these corporate travel bans, I think by the end of summer, we'll have a better idea of when they're really encouraging people to get back to work. But we know there are a lot of companies that have to get traveling quickly.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because right now, on both sides, there's uncertainty, right? Because on the corporate side, they can't guarantee any sort of volume. They can't tell us, you know, really what's going to happen, when it's going to release, and how many people are going to be allowed to fly, right? But yet, you know, on the hotel side, we don't know what's going to happen either with our rates. And so one of the things that I've been hearing about is a push to more of the dynamic rates, with having a cap on them, so that at least if hotel rates are dropping, they're not dropping below our BT. And a lot of people have that best practice anyhow, but there are some people who don't. What do you think about that model?
I think that model has been the trend for a couple of years, and it's great for everybody. Everybody wins with dynamic pricing, I feel like, but there's still the travel managers or the procurement officers that have to plan their budget. The thing that I say to them is, how can you even know what your budget is in this unknown time? So maybe going dynamic is really the way to go. But you know, that's been one of the challenges with dynamic in the past, is their ability to understand and budget their travel.
I think if you could have that cap on there, so you could say, you know, I'm not going to go over this amount. That would certainly help with budgeting. You know, and we've worked with some hotels that have that in place to try to accommodate the budget side of things for the corporation, but also to give that flexibility within the rate. So, you know, maybe you cap it at, I'm not going to go, you know, $40 above this or whatever. So anyhow, I think there are options, and I think this is going to change, you know, how we do things for a while.
I do too, and I think for those that are really the BT professionals that are really, they need to stay in contact with their clients. And I would even say, if you're not working, if you have the ability to still reach out to those that are your friends, because we know we all make friends with our clients, and just hear what, you know, try to stay abreast. Otherwise, you've got GBTA and other industry groups to get information from.
I'm going to ask you one more, and then I'm going to, Nicole, want to look at some of the chat and see what some of the questions are that are coming in. But how do you think negotiation is going to change over the coming 24 months? I mean, some people are saying, oh, it's a buyer's market. They're going to, you know, want really low rates, and we're just going to have to give it to them. I mean, aren't we in this together? I mean,
well, there you go. I mean, it is going to be a buyer's market. We know that. but we have got to really think about this. We need to maintain our rates. If this is a hit for the hotel business, this is a hit for the travel industry. Everybody's hurting, so let's work together for win-win for everybody, the best that we can. But just dropping rate, we saw after 9/11, we saw in the Great Recession, that does not create demand. You are not going to necessarily get more business because you drop your rates. So at least publicly, you know, be smart and have the rate integrity. With planners, you know, with negotiations, they're going to want, you know, block reviews, set dates for block reviews. They're going to want some flexibility with attrition, slippage, cancellations, and we're going to need to have some flexibility, let's be honest, because if you don't have any flexibility and you stick to the old ways in a new world, they're just going to move on down the street to the competitor. So we need to be having those conversations, but we need to work with them because costs are going up for hotels. If you're having fewer people in your meeting and they're ordering less food and they've got people zooming in, you know, you need a bigger room to accommodate fewer people. That's less food to purchase. And this cuts across all of the hospitality and, you know, restaurants, airlines, everything. You order less food, your pricing is not as great, your food cost goes up, right? So we need to be sure we're educating the people that we're working with on the fact that menu prices probably need to go up, and you need to be having those conversations with your chefs now. What does that look like? And hopefully, I mean, for a third-party planner, they need the commission too. They're going to be dealing with fewer amounts of people. Hopefully they won't be really wanting the rate to go so low. So I think we all need to be in this together, stick together.
Yeah, definitely. What about like meeting room rental? And, you know, if we're going to have to expand all of our networks at hotels to have more bandwidth, because there may be, you know, the more combination of virtual meetings with in-person, especially if companies need to accommodate people who are immunocompromised and they, you know, don't want to be out, but they want to be part of the meeting, or they don't want their people traveling internationally, or, you know, somebody is taking care of someone at home that they really can't risk getting exposed to anything. So there are going to be a lot of reasons why there will be combination, or you have to keep it to a certain size and social distance. So certain people come and certain people don't, right? So
exactly.
What are we going to do about that? Because it's been one of those things we've conceded on a lot in the past. And do you think that's going to change?
I think that room rental, we are going to be charging room rental, and we may not be charging rack rate on the room rental, but we're going to need to charge room rental. We're going to have to help offset the cost of things. You know, on the IT side of things, you're going to be charging more. Now, maybe you can tier it based on the needs of that client. If they need a lot of audio visual and a lot of people zooming in and they need to have, you know, very high bandwidth, you're going to be charging for that. But the other side of that coin is we need to be thinking now and talking to our IT teams or vendors now about, do we have enough bandwidth? I mean, what technology? Everybody's streaming now. You're going to have meetings with all this Zoom. What kind of technological, you know, advancements in terms of, you know, keyless entry or contactless check-ins, all of that. So first we have to have the basic infrastructure, and we're going to need to be charging for it. And I think we just need to explain that. I mean, maybe there'll be resistance, but this is the new norm.
Yeah. So I have a few questions that Nicole has sent to me from our audience. So do you think hotel staffing structures will change, and what impact will this have on national sales teams? Good question.
That's a good question. Yeah, I do think that structures are probably going to change. I think that unfortunately, hotels are going to be ramping back up, and occupancies won't be up there for some time. And hopefully they're not cutting back on salespeople, because again, salespeople are the future. We need to have our sales teams, but it may be a gradual ramp up. And so what used to be the standard, I have X number of people on my team always, you know, maybe you're not able to bring everybody back, at least not right away. And these are hard decisions, and these are painful decisions. And I think that we all need to support each other with this, but I do believe that it's going to be a challenge.
Do you think national sales will take on a greater role or a lesser role, perhaps?
Well, you could argue that both ways, right?
Both ways,
the global
yeah.
seller could they take the place of one of your sellers? Well, the global seller doesn't book the business. They bring the contract to you, or they bring the client to you, and then you book the business. So then do the on-property people look a little bit different in their in what you're looking for that? We
Especially
do know
for
that
market is going to be a little more in your backyard for a while, or more regionalized initially versus national and global, right?
Right. And I think global sellers are going to have to learn how to do that too, targeting with all their hotels, targeting where they should be going after, or which of their big companies, are going to be feeding which hotels. So everybody's going to need to be smart about that. I do think overall, though, sales is there's going to be time in ramping up the personnel again.
Yeah. So switching gears a little bit, do you see certain generations traveling more than others? And how is this going to impact business travel?
Well, I think we all hear that the millennials are chomping at the bit to get out. They're less worried about getting sick, and you see it on the Florida beaches, really. So I think that, and that speaks to certain industries. You look at tech, whatnot. But that doesn't mean, there are a lot of people that work within a region that are boomers or Gen X that still need to do business. And the needs for the differing people, you have to have all the duty of care for every generation. But, it just seems logical that the more adventuresome people are going to be the ones that are back out there first. But I do not have any crystal ball as far as that goes. Okay. And I don't know that there's a way from a business perspective to target that, unless you're targeting an industry that's a young industry, like tech or something.
Yeah. Another question, and I'll comment on this before I hand it over to you, but how can independents stand out to branded counterparts and events perspective through recovery? And I would just put a little shout out for BLLA and what they're going to be introducing very soon. So go get on their website, look for Boutique Strong, look for what's going on in that area, because they are really focused on helping the independent and boutique hotel recover. And so, there are two sides to that. Some people are saying brands are going to be where people want to go first because there's this trust in the brand, the trust in their ability to clean. And then other people are saying, no, give me this small hotel where I don't have to get on, wait in line with as many people in the elevator and all of those things. So, but the question is, how can independents stand out? Like, what can independents do in order to get attention in this market?
Yeah, I think independents need to lean into their smaller scale, not fewer number of rooms, fewer number of people checking in, checking out, smaller lobbies. But you have to think about that, because if you've got a lobby full of furniture, maybe you want to move some of that out to allow more space. I think that after 9/11, the brands came back first because they were trusted and they were a consistent product. But I think the boutique segment has come so far and has so many loyal followers and people that seek that out, that I really feel strongly that the independents and the smaller hotels are going to definitely come through this. And it's, again, the relationships that you have. And I think it's going to be hardest on the big boxes, maybe different brands that have smaller hotels. Okay, different story. But I think that to your point about BLLA, also AHLA also has come out with their standards. So if you're independent and you don't have a brand telling you, what the process is going to be, actually, even if you do hear from your brand what the process is going to be, what exactly does that look like in your hotel? And your people need to be very well trained, whether it's front desk, but particularly the salespeople, to really be able to describe what that guest journey is going to be like. Like, I want to hear firsthand. Steve Finetti at Kimpton Hotels used to call it a verbal video. walk me through my check-in experience. And you just give them the picture. You know, you arrive at the hotel, there's a doorman there or there isn't. They're in gloves, they're in a mask, so that you can set the expectation. Most of the independents probably don't have, you know, the electronic check-in opportunity. So what is that going to look like at the front desk? You know, maybe you're going to have a desk agent that's got a mask on, or maybe not. Maybe there's plexiglass between the guest and the agent. As detailed as you can get, I think will really help build confidence that people, that you know what you're doing and that you have a plan for them. What is it like when they get to their room? You know, maybe you're not cleaning rooms more than every 3 days, or maybe you're just waiting till they check out, and maybe that room is not occupied again for 72 hours. All of that, you have to work on that with your operations team to figure out how that looks. Again, this means that chances of selling out every day, all day long, you know, all week long, we're not going to be able to do that. There's a significant cost, a hit that we're going to take for that. But I think the more detailed you can be, I think planners and travel managers and guests even, you know, guests especially, just want to know exactly what is my experience going to be.
Yeah. And what are you going to require from them as well? Like, or do they need to wear masks? Do they need to, you know, or is there social distancing? Are you 6 feet from everyone? You know, what, are the restaurants open or closed? And if they're open, how are the tables? And, or is it reservation only? And all those types of things, right? They need to understand, like you said, from A to Z, what the experience is going to be. And, you know, I said this last week, but it bears repeating, that I never would have thought we'd be talking about how we can communicate our housekeeping process to our guests and our planners and all that. I mean, but now, you know, it used to be, I think we talked about this yesterday, Paige, it used to be that you wanted people to kind of not be seen when they were cleaning. And now it's the opposite. Like, I think they're going to want to see people cleaning the elevator, people cleaning the buttons, people cleaning the doors, people, you know, just making sure sanitizer everywhere. And so it's definitely a completely different environment than it was at my last business trip, which was March 2nd to the 4th, a big meeting, convention center. So it's going to be pretty darn different. Yeah. Okay. So, so how should hotels handle, this is a good one, and this is one of our questions about KPIs too, so I'm glad this came up. How should hotels handle sales bonus plans for 2020? Any recommendations on how GM owners should approach? KPIs are going to have to change. Yeah, Paige? Yeah, they sure are. And this is a big one, and I don't know that I have the answer for that, but how are we going to budget next year? And so setting up the bonus may need to look like something completely different. But we will come up with some kind of a budget or a forecast, and we will need to reach certain goals and be rewarded for those. But I think that you don't have any historicals to go after to say that you're going to increase this segment by this much and get some bonus for that, because you're starting kind of from scratch. So looking at it almost as if it's a new hotel. And I think that we need to get with our industry partners, that, you know, HSMAI, et cetera, to come up with some best practices around that, because I think that's a big question. And I've been thinking about it a lot and working with a client on looking at that for next year. And I'm just trying to absorb as much information as I can around that now. But we have to be creative, and we are a creative industry. And so maybe there's a different kind of a commission for a while. I'm not sure. Yeah, I know. And you make a good point that, you know, we have done this at a very small scale when we've closed down and renovated or opened a new hotel. You know, you've had to create a structure that makes sense for when you don't have that history, right? So but you're going to have a revenue goal. Regardless, you're going to have a revenue goal. And so what market segments are going to are going to meet that revenue goal, and therefore what does that look like by the numbers that you have, how many people you have, how does that get broken out? It's kind of, I guess, in some ways the same process. It's just a matter of the crystal ball and the budgeting. Yeah, it's going to be a tough one. But I think they definitely have to change. And I think with the one piece of advice I would give that is not at all analytical, and I'm typically pretty numbers driven, but is we've all been hit really hard. And this has been a super difficult time, and owners have been, we know that, and we know that employees have been. But I think if we can look at being generous and being giving during this time, and looking at goals in a measured way, and having more flexibility than we've had in the past on some of those things, because of circumstances that we may end up walking through, whether that be another round of this or, you know, something else, you know, this could go on for a while, they're saying. So I think we do need to be able to build into this some type of flexibility, and some type of, I'm not going to set this for a whole year, you know, maybe I set it quarterly, and then it changes, and you know, because I think the environment is just going to continue to change, and you know, I just long for us as an industry to be really fair and equitable to our people, because we wouldn't make money without them, right? So I think that's important.
That's well said. Yeah.
So here's another. Do you think Amtrak will come back before the airline industry, and what are the ways to target Amtrak business? I wish they would just like hire everyone and build Amtrak all across the country right now, but I don't know that that's going to happen. I love Amtrak because I live in New York City and I can come and see you and work the whole way, and you know, all that fun stuff. But
that East
what do you
Coast
think about
track,
Amtrak?
the Acela, on the East Coast, New York to DC thing is real. My daughter told me that the buses that run between Washington DC and New York City are started up again, and that's very hopeful. You're kind of like, well, who wants to go to New York City if the attractions aren't open? But people have friends and family up there, and it's a beautiful time of year. So Amtrak has always been there, and I love traveling by train, but it is not as available across the country as it is in certain places. I know Los Angeles, you can do the train between Santa Barbara and LA, and you can do Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, New York up to Boston. And they've got their social distancing plan as well. And so that is a great option. But marketing to Amtrak customers, wow. I mean, I used to do a lot of that back in the day because we did have Union Station right in Washington, D.C., and we partnered with them. We put ads in their Acela magazine and that sort of thing, but they have not, I don't mean to dismiss Amtrak by any stretch of the imagination, but they haven't been the most forward thinking in terms of how they're advertising. So maybe we need to help them. You know, maybe we can figure out how to get to their database, to market to their database better.
Yeah, because they have a loyalty program, and they, you know, their app is easy to use. If there were a way to you know, push a message on the app, that would be great. You know, if we could figure that out with them. Yeah, because they don't do a lot of it. As we learn more large hotels closing for good, like for example, they just announced that the new Edition here in Times Square is closing, and it just opened, I think, last year, right? And I would imagine we're going to hear of a few more that are either shutting down permanently, so they say, until someone buys them, or indefinitely until they figure out what the next step is. So as we learn more about that, do you think we're finally going back to a more structured pricing strategy rather than drop rate to chase full occupancy? It's a good question.
Well, yes, I hope so. I mean, rate integrity and rational pricing is going to be more important than ever. And I think I'm going to keep saying it, and you need to keep saying it, and we need to tell everybody dropping rate does not create more demand. And there will be hotels that are not going to reopen, and that is so sad, just as there will be restaurants that will not reopen. So the supply has been a problem for a couple of years with all the new hotels that have been developed, New York, Miami, wherever. And so we don't know yet how many we're going to lose, but I do think that we do need to maintain our prices the best that we can, at least publicly. And, you know, do packages, do add-ons, do enhance your stays, length of stay, get extra, you know, 2 nights, 3rd night free, whatever that looks like, just to help publicly keep the bar where it needs to be.
Yeah, we've got to maintain pricing integrity. We didn't after 9/11, we didn't after 2008, and I know it's easier said than done. I know we get pressure from ownership to push and get that revenue in the door, but you know, dropping price does not drive demand, and so and there's no share to steal right now, and I don't know that there will be for a while. So I think we really, as an industry, need to be cognizant of that. And really have a pricing strategy in place and not let it just be all over the place, right?
Right.
And I think that represents all commercial teams coming together, working together. So sales, marketing, revenue, distribution, all coming together and working with our general managers to be aligned on what we're going to do and what the strategy is. And I think it's extremely important to take the time to do that and evaluate it. Now with hotels closing, we are going to have to figure out who in our comp set still open, when are they opening, you know, and do we need to change anything in our pricing with our comp set? You know, so we're going to need to do kind of that analysis that we do in a sales and marketing plan of, I hate to call it SWOT analysis, but basically, you know, look at who's left and where are we positioned now against them versus where we used to be.
Yeah.
And
I think too, really, you know, getting with your hotels around you. I mean, all of a sudden, a small hotel is not going to have maybe the biggest space to accommodate this new, bigger, you know, the smaller group needing more space. You know, work together. Maybe they can refer something smaller to you, you refer something larger, you know, looking at your rooms. That's another thing, rooms to space ratios, that's going to be that's out the window. You need to look at that formula and see what that's going to look like in the future. But there are going to be
redraw all your rooms capacity charts and all the you know, U-shape and round table and all that. Instead of having 10, you're going to have 4. You know, all of that work has to be done.
That's one of the things that needs to be happening right now is you need to be looking at your seating capacities and seeing what the new one looks like. And if you've got a diagram tool, then you use that and get those going so that you can send those out to clients when they ask, so that you're ready. Set up your rooms, show what it's going to look like, and think about what is a banquet going to look like now? Is it going to have a sneeze guard over it? It's going to have a server. I don't think you want everybody in the meeting touching the same spoon going down the line. Maybe there won't be banquets. Maybe you'll do grab and go. What's the cost of that? What's the impact to the environment of that? With maybe you're going with, you know, plastics where you wouldn't have before, where we tried to avoid that. You know, that's things more disposable things are somewhat safer. Yeah. So what do your menus look like? Back to the pricing. Also, what are the ways that you're going to serve the food, and what kind of food is it going to be to have it be appropriate for this new so you really have to
partner with your chef and banquets and everyone to figure this out, because it's a lot of change coming out the pike, and we have to think about it from the attendees' perspective. So who's coming to the meeting and what are their impressions going to be? What does the corporation want to ensure safety of their traveler, of their meeting attendee? So, you know, I think there are a lot of considerations that we're going to need to talk through. You know, there's a lot of good material starting to be written around this out there, but I don't think anyone has it down to this is the best practice. You know, I don't think we're there yet.
Right, which is why we need to keep talking, and we need to keep having these conversations and sharing what we know so that we all benefit.
Yeah, right, exactly. So I have another couple here. Let's see. Any tools or recommendations for staff backyard programs to incentivize the staff to get on board with everyone sells? So basically your whole staff, is there an incentive around everybody in the hotel selling?
Everybody's a salesperson. You know, there's a lot about back to basics that I think has to happen again today. I think that prospecting, we got to a point where all the leads were just pouring in from Cvent and from our global sales teams, and it was all we could do to keep up with those. And our directors wanted us prospecting, and our GMs wanted us prospecting, and our corporate offices wanted us prospecting. But gosh, shouldn't I be addressing these warm leads that are coming in? They're asking for my hotel. Yes. Well, we know those leads are, you know, that flow has really slowed down. So now it is back to basics. And that includes everybody in the hotel becoming a salesperson. And you can get really creative with how you inspire people. And, you know, money talks. So figure out a way to give them a commission if their church group wants to come, if their neighbor books a group, if somebody that they know, a family member books a dinner. Find a way to be able to monetize that, I guess, to put it a little bit truthfully, like put some money behind that, but get them excited to work with you and to help you. And I think we've always done that to a degree, but let's stay tight with our housekeeping staffs and our front desk, and let's have them be so proud of what we are serving and what we are, our product, that they want to keep talking about. They work here and it's a great place to work, and you want to put your business here.
Somebody on our one of our hospitality groups on Facebook posted the first day that someone had come back to work at the front desk in their hotel, and he was doing this dance and just so happy and excited. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait till everyone can do that. And so, yeah, I mean, I think everyone is going to be so thrilled to come back. Some people I think are nervous because they're like, how am I being protected, right? And I get that, I understand that. And some people, you know, that's a real conundrum for people, especially if you know, they're immune compromised, or they take care of an elderly parent, or they have a child who has asthma or whatever, right? That can be really scary. But yet, you know, I think there is a lot of excitement as well about us being able to come back. It's just like, what does that look like and feel like?
Right. So a couple of things to that. One is, you know, the detail that we give to our clients, we need to be giving to our employees. We need to be telling them how we're going to protect them, if we are protecting them, what we can do for them, how we're going to make them feel safe, how we've got an open door if they're concerned, and let's work this out together. Let's figure this out together. I also think how we care for employees is something that clients are going to be interested in. That's a good story. They want to book at a hotel that's taking care of their employees. That's why being one of the top places to work is important from a PR perspective. But that made me think, that video made me think that would be a really fun thing if you were taking some video like that to introduce your hotel to a new client. Hey, we're back to work. Look at our front desk. You know, finding ways to cheer people up. All these commercials that are on TV, half of them make me cry. You know, they're just so poignant. And when you see the happiness on people, when people are happy about something, or these, like whether it's a Zoom birthday party or graduation, people are so clever. I really believe that people in this industry are clever and are going to find really unique ways to communicate the message.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we have another one here. How would you solicit your hotel to construction sites going on in your area without, what was the word they used, without being too pushy? Because construction is still happening, even in New York City.
For those of you that worked at Kimpton that knew Steve Panetti, especially back in the day, that was always on the top things when pre-opening in a hotel is hit all the construction sites, look for the cranes in the air and head on over. I think you don't want to talk to the, you know, the guy on site necessarily. You want to look at Hit Construction or whatever the construction company is and go there and talk to them about what they're doing and how they're doing it. Many of those are locals that are working, right? So you know, it just depends on how much business is going to be traveling in from other parts, that, you know, what needs they might have.
All right, so I have another question that's come in, and then I'm gonna, we're almost out of time, so I wanna honor everyone's time. But I do wanna tell everyone, if there are questions that come up afterwards, you can send them to me. I think on the confirmation that you got, you had an email. I'll work with Paige and getting answers to you as best we can. If we know the answers, we don't have all the answers, but we'll certainly give you what we can. And, you know, we definitely want to help you in whatever way that we can, because we're definitely here for recovery and want to be a resource to the industry. So what are your thoughts on room rental based on square footage needed to accommodate new regulations instead of charging based on covers?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I have the right formula. It's so different for everybody's meeting space. I think you need to get together and think about the cost. You need to get with your chef, your banquets team, your operations team, and really talk about what is the cost going to be, and then how do I offset that between AV, IT, menu, pricing, and room rental. And we just are going to have to educate planners that giving away room rental is not really going to work anymore. Another thing to think about is, you know, catering free sell. You might want to open that up more because you don't know that you're going to have that group. And if you've got somebody that wants to have an event and it's a decent event, you might want to go for it. You might not want to wait for the big group with the rooms to come in. Whole new world.
And I would encourage you as well, just work with your revenue management leaders as well, because they are into analytics and numbers, and they can really help you run the profitability on that stuff and work in combination with you to figure out, you know, what's the best model for your hotel, because, you know, like Paige said, it might be different depending on the hotel, so there may not be one thing that works for everybody. But, you know, I encourage you to work with your revenue management team, because they definitely are analytical, numbers, spreadsheet, typically people who can really run those models and create them for you. Don't try to do that all on your own. Like, use that resource that you have that can help with that.
I think that's a great recommendation for the restaurants as well, in terms of table seating and yielding your tables and your seats. Yep.
So I have two last questions I'm hoping we can get through. So how do you believe sales professionals can upskill during this time? What can they do to improve their sales skills and their marketability? You know, especially if you're, you know, furloughed or laid off, you know, how do you make sure you're the best candidate in the future?
Well, a couple of things. One is if you're not furloughed, and I know everybody's busy because the teams are not full. So I don't mean to say that you've got all this extra time and space, but you do have you do need to, this is important. It should be a priority, the training side of things. And I don't mean bringing in a company to do training on sales process. I mean, do you really know Agency 360? Do you know the information you can pull out of that for your BT clients? And now they've done this enhancement. So there's so much more information. Like we've been saying, I've said this to a couple of people, it should be illegal, the amount of information you can pull out of Agency 360 now and Demand 360. If you're in sales and you're not using Demand 360, you need to learn that tool and work with your revenue director, because most of them know it very well, and figure out how you can use that, because maybe what happened in the past is no longer important, but knowing what's happening in the future and where the groups that are coming are showing up and what segments are booking. You can see all of that in Demand 360. This is a great time to really make sure you know those tools very, very well. Nolan reporting offers so much more than it did in the beginning. And so I think a lot of salespeople didn't spend a lot of time in there. Well, this is a good time to really get in there and see, how do I, you know, cut and slice and dice the information to get what I'm really looking for. So I recommend all the tools, even Cvent. There's a lot of information in Cvent from people that have sent you leads that are good prospecting lists for you now in the future. So that would be my short term for those that still have access to those tools if they're furloughed or if they're working and they're you know, and they need to make time for that. What I will say is I think that salespeople for the most part are doing a great job on LinkedIn, but LinkedIn is where you need to be sure you're highlighting yourself and everything that you bring to the table, because LinkedIn is one of the biggest recruiting areas. I mean, that's where people are going to be looking. They're going to be looking at LinkedIn. So make sure your profile is what you want it to be. Make sure it's really showcasing what your assets are, what your strengths are. Be on there, be communicating, be following the brands that you like or the boutique hotels or whatever that you like. Utilize LinkedIn as much as you can.
Yeah, and I know there are some, a lot of different companies are offering some free things right now. Google is offering free training on some of their analytics. I know that there are project management tools out there that are selling for like $29 instead of a normal $500. You know, so there are a lot of different areas that I think you can take advantage of now. Even there are huge discounts on language apps to learn a new language, which is always valuable and a great skill to have. So
Amadeus is doing a training, very specific training on Delphi, FDC, and you know, for refreshers. So if you've been off of Delphi for a while and you need to get back in there, those are free. And again, all these webinars that are out there and articles, be a sponge, you know, read all of it, inhale the information. The information arms you. Yeah.
So my last question, and we started off with this, that our heart is breaking for our industry. You know, I get emotional, sorry, but it is. I mean, you and I have been doing this for a really long time, and we've known each other for a super long time and become friends over the course of all these years. And I have so many colleagues and friends that I can see just going through such difficult times. So what is your encouragement for all of them, Paige? Because you and I are in that boat. We love the industry, and I'd love to know, leave with a word of encouragement for them.
You know what? This is a resilient industry. Have hope. We always come back. You know, you think that working for a hotel is one of the safest things you can do for job security because everybody needs to travel and everybody needs hotels. This maybe turned that on its head a little bit, but it's going to come back. People need to travel. They need to meet. They need to do business. Have hope and never give up. Never surrender. It's going to come back, and we just need to stick together and we need to work together as best as we can.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Paige. I think I'm having a little internet challenge here in New York. We've had some issues here throughout the city. So I think my screen may have gone away, but I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. Paige, thank you so much for your insight. Please feel free to send questions to us. Again, our website's dragonflyftr.com. We have contact information out there. You can send it to sales@dragonflyftr.com or to Carol at dragonflyftr.com, and I'll make sure that we get with Paige and get answers back to you. And we hope to see you next week. We're going to be hosting Jameson Aselta from Ideas and talking about revenue management and systems and how we can take advantage of that. So really appreciate everyone being here. Be encouraged, have hope, and we're all in this together. Take care. Bye-bye.